Hey, so I would like to just thank everyone for taking a minute to check out my channel. I'm just gonna kind of start with why I'm doing this, and hopefully it'll benefit a lot of EMTs and paramedic students. Even nursing students can benefit from this stuff because you'll kind of learn a little bit differently than what they teach in nursing school, which is, I think, pretty important. Anyways, and it's extra information. Obviously, always stick with your protocols, and reference your national registry and local protocols. So this is just used to kind of as a study guide to prepare for national registry. So I've been a paramedic for 18 years. 12 or 13 of those years I did critical care transport through EMS, and it was pretty much like life flight, the helicopter transports, but on ground. We did transports with really, really critical patients, ICU patients, trauma patients, things like that. That included ventilators, lots of pumps, balloon pumps, impellas, just, the whole 9 yards. You imagine walking into an ICU room that's just full of equipment. That's pretty much what we did, is transport those patients. I was also a firefighter, paramedic, 5 of those years. I like being part of the community, but I don't really entirely terribly miss all the hard work, because being a firefighter is a lot of work. I've also went back to school for my BSN in nursing. I currently work in a med-surg ICU. And we'll get started with the content. So our content today will be based on communication systems. So I hope you guys like it. All right, radio and communication systems. So radio waves are electromagnetic waves that transfer information or transmit information from one location to another. There's 2 different types of frequencies. You have a very high frequency, which operates at 30 to 300 megahertz. The positives and negatives regarding very high frequency is that they operate at a very long range. However, you have a lot more issues with interference. Ultra high frequency operates at a frequency of 300 megahertz to 3.0 gigahertz, which is a lot higher of frequency range. Positives and negatives for this one, for the ultra high frequency. There's definitely less concerns with frequency interference. However, these radio systems operate at much shorter ranges than the very high frequency. Also, kind of an interesting fact that I picked up out of the book, one of the books that I was reading recently, is that narrowband technology that's been allocated by the FCC has actually been increased based on demand and need. So they've essentially assigned more channels and frequencies to public service. Alright, so system components. You have the most basic one, which is base stations. I kind of compare base station to a non-mobile military base. You have your main center, your main hub, basically. This is a really large antenna that extends really far ranges, and typically it's located at dispatch centers, things like that. So they're really, really big antennas, and here's just a little graphic here for you too, that it's just a cute little antenna. It's actually supposed to be a big antenna, but yeah. Alright, so mobile transceivers are mounted in vehicles. These transceivers rely on power from the vehicle, so if there's no power, you are not going to have a functional radio. They're mobile, obviously, it says it in the name. And then these put out 5 to 50 watts of power. It might be something that you might need to know for National Registry. Portable transceivers are handheld radios. You'll often see police officers carry their handheld radios, firefighters, even EMS. You'll see these radios. These are battery powered. And the most important thing regarding portable transceivers is just make sure that the battery is charged before you head out of the station for a call or for the day. So first thing in the morning is usually what I would do is just check and make sure that everything was charged and that my battery power throughout my shift was adequate. It's important to make sure that you do have battery power because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you can't communicate with dispatch or your command post. It can definitely cause some concerns, especially if you're on a fire scene, for example. The risk of injury and situations happening is much higher. And even on the EMS side, you have sometimes we run into more potentially dangerous situations, and we want to be able to communicate with dispatch and whoever we need to be able to maintain safety for ourselves and safety for our patients. All right, so the simplex radio system is pretty simple. It's definitely a more basic radio system. All these transmissions that come through are transmissions that occur on one single frequency. And typically these are utilized for tactical scenes and things like that, where you are all within a fairly close range with one another, and you can, utilize communication systems through that way. The duplex radio system operates on 2 different frequencies. It kind of says in its name, so that'll make it easier to remember the function of this radio system and the frequencies it utilizes. One frequency is used for sending transmissions, and a different frequency is used to receive transmission. Communication is allowed one direction at a time, and repeaters are necessary to utilize the duplex radio system. The multiplex radio system kind of says it in its name again. It carries multiple signals, and these signals allow transmission on multiple streams of communication simultaneously. The most common use for this system would be, an example would be you can send voice transmission to the hospital and an EKG transmission at the same time. Continuing radio systems, you have the digital radio. I actually think this is probably my personal favorite radio system, just because it just seems like more quality transmissions. So essentially, information is received and transmitted in an analog signal or a voice signal that is actually digitized and compressed by software and subsequently sent over to the base station. But by compressing it, the information actually allows the voice transmissions to come across clearer, and more information can be transmitted at a time utilizing the digital radio system. So a long time ago, and I don't even know if this is really a thing anymore, but for large files, we would have to compress information by zipping the file and then at the receiving end, you would like unzip the file. So it kind of makes me think about that, like how information is just compacted together, and then at the receiving end, it's kind of uncompressed or decompressed, I guess it'd be. All right, so this is kind of how repeaters work. You can look at the illustration and see the base station, which is, I kind of mentioned earlier in this presentation, base stations are typically located at the dispatch centers or the hospitals. It kind of depends on how your EMS system is set up. Some EMS systems utilize hospital transports through the hospital system. Some operate a little bit differently, and they have their own independent like dispatch centers. It just kind of depends on what company you're working for, where you're at, and what state you're located in, things like that. Large antennas typically transmit information from one place to another, obviously. If the original dispatch location cannot transmit the information as far as needed, they utilize repeaters, and you can see like the base tower, and then it kind of sends that signal over to a repeater and it's kind of pictured as like a little mountain technically, but and then that repeater transmits the information to whatever radio system, like mobile radio system, is needed. Encoded radio systems are basically, they just allow multiple users to share the same frequency and repeaters. So an example of that would be like if fire and PD were utilizing the same frequencies and repeaters, or even private EMS, you can kind of loop into that too. Next, we have digital trunked radio systems. These are actually a fairly complex radio system. These systems operate under bandwidths of 8 to 900 ultra high frequency. These also utilize multiple repeaters and computers to route radio traffic. Typically, these are utilized for busy EMS systems, busy fire and police systems as well. Dead spots. So we're kind of all probably pretty familiar with dead zones using our cell phones. I would say there's definitely like a comparable like process, just like our cell phones. They're dead spots. Dead zones or dead spots are typically caused by a couple different things. Large buildings, industrial complexes, things like that, like really big like buildings, mountains, and other various large objects can create dead spots. Being out in really rural areas can also be a factor for dead spots, because there's less people, there's less development, and definitely less radio towers. All right, so radio etiquette. It's really important to maintain professionalism and etc. on the radio. The FCC actually regulates radio channels and traffic content, really. So the use of obscene, inappropriate language is definitely very unacceptable. Try to maintain your professionalism. Violations can include fines and penalties. So the FCC essentially will just drop in randomly onto various channels and kind of do random monitoring, and if they hear something inappropriate, it can cause a lot of problems for both the company that you're working for, whether it's private or public, and yourself. So don't swear or drop the F-bomb or anything, okay, guys? So, National Registry probably won't be asking questions about the phonetic alphabet, but it's definitely a good thing to kind of be fairly familiar with working in public service. So I thought I'd just kind of add this for extra, just basic information.